Some years ago, I used to walk for exercise early in the morning, like 3 a.m. I don't anymore because I'm done walking around in the dark. I'd rather watch TV and eat what I want, not worry about it anymore. But I used to. I'd get up way early, go walking around the various neighborhoods. Where I live, the desert's always close, no matter where you go in town. My travels would take me out to the edges and then back in again. There's patches of mesquite and chaparral scattered throughout the housing areas that hide entire homeless camps that the rubes never even see. They're not even aware of the cluster of others in their midst, especially during the autumn and winter months when the homeless migrate down south to get out of the cold. If you go any further south than us, you're in Mexico. So I'd walk the streets and alleys and the paths and trails out to the edge of the desert and back again, in and out of the hoods and the trailer parks. Sometimes I'd stop at one of the convenience stores that were open, get a coffee. I never saw a lot of citizens out at that time. Saw the others, though. Yeah, most were harmless. Some were crazy, though. Some were meth heads. Once in a while, you'd run into a couple that thought they'd found an easy mark out walking around in the dark. What it's like when dogs try to bluff you with that low growl, dropping their heads and baring their teeth. You stare at them and keep walking, they usually get out of your way. Of course, I'm an old fat guy from the old school. My hand always rested on my friend Smith & Wesson when I was on these little field trips. When you get old enough and you see enough weird stuff, you take precautions. I guess it was early December when the weirdness started. I'd be out doing my walk in the dark, and it would seem I'd be able to hear like a car with a bad muffler. Maybe one of those hopped-up little Toyotas with a fart can exhaust that those kids like to race around. But it'd be way off in the distance, like in the next neighborhood over. Didn't give it much thought at first, till I saw how some of the homeless reacted. If they were on the streets and heard that obnoxious-sounding car, they would vanish into the next cover. One night, I had a guy approach me from out of a gully next to the sidewalk. Asked if I had any spare change. It was light enough by the street lamp I could see he was alone, so I tell him hang on. I start digging in my jacket pocket for a few singles I carried there for coffee. About this time, I hear this car. It's 3 or 4 blocks down on a cross street, pulling up to a stop sign under a streetlight. The effect on the guy bumming money from me was galvanizing. He looks down the street, he stiffens and bolts back into the gully he came out of. I could hear him running and falling, whipping through the mesquite branches. I look back down the street, and the car turns and heads slowly up to where I'm standing under the light. As it passes under each street light, I get a little better look at the driver. I don't want to take the guy's picture, but just as a precaution, I tap the voice memo button on my phone just in case. I have something I call the weird meter. It activates whenever something or someone is not quite right. It served me well in the past when I was in the military, when I was a private investigator, and when I did personal security work. And it was tripping now like a son of a gun. Car was a little rusted-out station wagon, used to be white. Looked like an import from Yugoslavia or someplace like that. Smoke coming out of that bad muffler, cracks in the windows. He hung his head just over the steering wheel to get a look at me as he slowly rolled up, and his long, thin arms up on the dash. I could barely breathe. This guy looked like a Halloween skeleton. He finally rolls up even with me, and I thought I was gonna faint. The waves of threat and evil that rolled off this guy. He was terminal junkie thin. Eyes were sunk deeply into his skull. Were mostly just shadows. He had shoulder-length hair that was snow white. Actually, he was all snow white, like an albino, like Johnny and Edgar Winter. And so thin, man. He was nightmare thin. I just stood there frozen like a deer in some sadistic trucker's headlights. My hand was on the gun in my jacket when this guy smiles and sticks his hand out of the window, making a pistol out of his thumb and forefinger. He goes, pew, pew, pew. His hand recoiling each time. And this weird little cackling laugh, smirking at me. And finally he says, Ario Om Ita Hunter 2. With this weird accent, like a gypsy or something. I was making an I don't understand you gesture with my non-gun hand when he just cackles that weird laugh again and drives off. Crossed the main road and moved into another neighborhood. The sound of his car finally fading to nothing. My heart was beating so erratically, I had to sit down on the sidewalk just to recover. I made it home. I didn't walk in the dark for several weeks. The episode scared me so badly. I didn't want to venture out, especially when I would periodically play that recording back again. It finally got to a point that I was having nightmares about this guy. And I thought I could hear that broken muffler coming through my neighborhood in the wee hours. Yeah, I finally confided in a friend of mine that was a policeman, telling him about the entire encounter. He just stared at me and said, "They call him Whitey. The homeless. This is what they call him." He went on to say that there'd been scattered reports of some of the homeless having gone missing, and they seemed to think it was because of this guy. I asked why I hadn't heard anything about this, and he says, nobody reports missing homeless people. I tell him about the recording, and I play it for him. He just keeps staring at me. What? I say. And he says, we arrested this chick a while back, said she was a witch. She spoke in this way where you broke words up in improper places so you disguised their meaning. Called it speaking in sigil. Then he says, listen to the recording again and repeat it quickly. I told him I didn't understand. And he says, that guy asked you, are you a meat hunter too?
Are you a meat hunter too?
Did you enjoy our tale? We hope we didn't scare you too much. And if we didn't, why not give this CreepyPasta story a try? Who knows? Maybe it'll help you find something deep down inside.